The key word I'll be coming back to for writing scenes is focus. On your initial write of a scene, I find it best to keep it simple without a lot of fluff to inhibit you or slow you down. Upon a rewrite, you can better analyze a scene and add nuance. But again, focus. It's important that you can always pinpoint exactly what is happening in a scene, and why. If your scene is getting murky and confusing to even yourself, it surely will be to the audience. I'm going to lead you through the process of writing a scene with a few simple steps, and I'll be comparing these points to both a good and a bad scene. Let's get started. When writing a scene, we need to be thinking about two main things. First, what do my characters want in this scene? What is the reason they are here? What are they trying to achieve in this one little moment in time? Second, what do my characters want in the greater story? Their scene goal is an essential step in service of getting the character to the greater story goal. Let's look at Fantastic Mr. Fox as an example. Forgive the lack of audio. Pairing audio with the visuals will copyright strike my channel, so I've turned the subtitles on and I have the script here in front of us to follow along with. This is the very first scene of the movie. The scene begins with Mr. Fox waiting around for Mrs. Fox to get back from her doctor's appointment. We get this line from Mrs. Fox.
What'd the doctor say?
Nothing. Supposedly it's just a 24-hour bug. He gave me some pills.
She's shyly avoiding the truth though, because her desire in this scene is to tell Mr. Fox that she is pregnant. We'll see how that comes into play in a few moments. Now that they're together, they start heading home. We get this interplay where we see Mr. Fox sly his way into going down a preferred route home. It is his preferred route because it passes by a farm which he wants to steal food from. His scene goal is to rob the farm on the way home. As Mrs. Fox realizes that he's robbing the farm again, her insecurities about it start coming out and she presses their safety. Her overall story goal, she wants their family to be safe. Mr. Fox takes these worries lightly and reassures her that he's done it many a time, so everything will be fine. This is because his greater story goal is to be the greatest wild fox of all time. He wants to be a wild animal. Next question. What do our characters do to achieve their goals, and what changes ensue? If a scene ends and your story is unchanged, then something has gone terribly wrong. Change is the bread and butter of story, thus it is the bread and butter of writing scenes. Change is the reason that your story should exist in the first place. Change is the entire concept of a character arc. They begin in one place but change over the story, ending somewhere else. When your story stops changing, your story is over. Changes can be big or small, inside characters or out in the world. It could be a shift in someone's beliefs, goals, perspective. It could be an external event shifting that presents new opportunities or roadblocks to the characters. But the change must always be a change that is funneling the story toward the ultimate change that will complete the story. We don't want any unrelated bunny trails. Now, you might be asking why a story needs to change. Because turning the story brings about change in our moral, ethical, or philosophical conflict. Change is what allows us to hone down on the ideas in our story until we find a resolution, which is how you, as the artist, make your statement on the subject matter. Setup, change, and resolution is the means by which we tell effective, meaningful stories. Alright, enough chitter chatter. Let's look again at Fantastic Mr. Fox to see how the characters pursue their goals, thus causing change to erupt within the story. Mrs. Fox wants their family to be safe, so naturally she goes to the doctor when she feels ill. As she may have suspected, she's pregnant now, which only heightens her desire to keep their family safe. The way that she acts upon her beliefs is by asking to take the shortcut home. She worries to her husband about their safety. She's waiting for the perfect time to tell Mr. Fox, so she keeps avoiding it on the way home. But then, when they get caught in the cage, she immediately pops the surprise because she's afraid it may be the only opportunity she gets.
I guess it's not spring-loaded.
I'm pregnant.
Wow.
Mr. Fox has the desire to rob this chicken farm. It feeds directly into his overall story goal to be a wild animal, the most sly fox out there. What change happens in this scene? The momentary safety of the family is flipped on its head when they get caught in a trap and the farmers pursue them with pitchforks. Mr. Fox's scene goal fails when he gets them caught in a trap. Mrs. Fox tells her husband that he has to find a new line of work when they get out of there. He agrees out of love for his wife, but this is a change that will separate him from his greater story goal that was being fulfilled not but a moment ago. Now you may have noticed that with this change we progress to a new location. New matters are at hand, new ideas are at play. This is because the scene has changed. What I'm pointing out is that a scene is a collection of beats that lead up to a significant change. Once that change has happened, you change scenes. Again, nothing in your story should be happening if it is not in service of a change. That is the process of writing a scene. It's a very simple concept that can go very wrong if you forget to follow change and get rid of the fluff. Now, let's scrub back through this opening scene from Fantastic Mr. Fox and break it down further. Allow me to show you 5 things to think about when revisiting a scene for a rewrite. Number 1. What do the characters want? We established this previously. Number 2. What is the specific problem in the scene? I would say the specific problem in the scene is getting home. Mrs. Fox wants to head straight home while Mr. Fox wants to take a detour. This is a clear problem occurring in the scene. Number 3. What creates the scene conflict? There are 2 main types of conflict in the scene. First, there's the internal conflict between the values of Mr. Fox and Mrs. Fox. She urges him towards safety while he steamrolls towards the dangers of being a wild animal. This causes tension between them. Second, there is the external conflict when his line of work comes to a close by getting caught. These 2 forms of conflict are lending toward a slow exploration of the philosophical conflict too, which tackles the idea of whether or not your primal desires should be embraced. Number 4. What do the characters do to get what they want? We already talked about this. They both find ways to get their respective desires. Whether that be taking the detour on the way home for Mr. Fox or trying to get home as soon as possible after going to the doctor's for Mrs. Fox. Question 5. How does the scene change the overall story? The scene must fit into the overall narrative. I said that these events lend themselves towards the philosophical conflict, which means it is directly contributing to the overall story. This event separates Mr. Fox from his overarching goals, and brings the goals of Mrs. Fox closer to fruition. The overall story is about which of these worldviews is correct. This major change at the beginning of the film sets the stage for this conflict to be explored. It is a necessary and valuable piece to the overall story. Focus. The scene is incredibly clear about everything it is trying to communicate. There can be no mistaking its goals, motivations, or changes. Let's now look at Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness to find a recently released example of a poorly written scene. We're going to watch through the scene together and I'll be pointing out all of the things it does wrong, which should be an exact contrast to this first scene from Fantastic Mr. Fox. I wanted to choose 2 scenes right at the beginning of a film to make it easier to understand as a comparison, but I've actually chosen the second scene from Doctor Strange rather than the first, and this scene begins at 3 minutes and 52 seconds into the movie. In the first scene, Doctor Strange has a dream where a monster is chasing a mysterious girl trying to suck her power from her. Strange realizes she can't control the power yet, so he tries to take the power from her to assure the monster can't have any part of it. He is willing to sacrifice the girl for this cause. Then when he wakes up, we land here. What is the scene goal? Strange goes to his friend Christine's wedding, who is a former love interest. At the wedding, the two have an interchange in which Strange tries to apologize for the choices he made, but he justifies it by saying he had no choice. Christine jabs back at him for his willingness to sacrifice those he loves in the name of his cosmic responsibilities. So what is the scene goal? On Christine's front, it's just to have her wedding, in which all is going well. But with Strange is where it gets kinda murky. He has gone to the wedding. I assume his goal is to apologize to her. To what end, I don't know, because clearly he isn't getting her back. But also I'm confused by the fact that he does not engage the conversation. He just stands by the bar until she happens to walk up to him. The scene goal is a little shaky to me. Now what is the overall story goal? The overall story goal is for Strange to discover the secrets of the girl and vanquish the evils that pursue her. As the scene plays out though, it has no real relevance to the overall story goal. The thematic plotting that Strange is an arrogant turd was already established in the first scene, so there's nothing but a re-establishment of that in this scene. These 2 scenes so far do not tie together well except through some previously established facts about Strange. Next question. What does Strange do to pursue his goals and what changes result? We already addressed that it isn't he who initiates their first conversation. That whole element confuses me a little, but maybe the thought process was that he didn't want to interrupt her during her dance. Regardless, there is this moment where he brings her back to make a point. That's the most effort shown by him in this whole scene. There's no change between either of them in this scene. Their relationship stays platonic and distanced, and they both go their separate ways, just as they were before. Sure, they reintroduce some ideas from the previous scene, but that isn't a very substantial contribution, especially considering it doesn't play a big part in the ultimate narrative. This moment where they walk away more or less changed serves as the finale for the scene, where we hear a stock car crash noise to hilariously connect to the next scene. There was no real conflict or tension in this scene because Strange did not have a well-baked scene goal or greater story goal. There's a lot of retreading ground. I kept telling you to focus, which applies directly to this scene. I kept having to think outside the box to justify what was happening. Maybe she was just in the middle of the dance, maybe. Making the scene murky and confusing like this isn't nuance or subtlety, it's poor, unfocused writing. Always focus your scenes. As another example, I want to look at the second scene from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This will be a brief section because it's a simple scene, but I wanted to point it out to compare two animated children's movies. People tend to give animated movies a lot of slack with lazy or poor writing, justifying it by saying it's made for kids. But Fantastic Mr. Fox is an example of an animated film that can still be expertly crafted and all the better for it. This is the second scene, which begins at 5 minutes and 14 seconds. What is the character's scene goal? Here we see a group of thugs making a robbery. Sonic is hyping himself up as the hero of the city, so when he realizes the robbery is taking place, he takes the opportunity to prove it. He's trying to stop the robbery. What is the greater story goal? The greater story goal is really the same, for him to be the greatest hero he can be. There are just lessons he has not learned yet on how to do that. From the get-go, these two goals are pretty much the same, which is somewhat unfortunate and shallow. What does Sonic do to pursue his goals, and what changes result? Sonic rushes out after these robbers and stops them. The robbery is stopped, and he convinces himself he is the greatest hero because of it. There's no change in this scene. He starts out feeling the hero, and he ends feeling the hero. The reason I wanted to point out this scene is because many times in writing, I see a failure to communicate change in every scene, when they justify it as a build-up. In scenes 3 and 4, some conflicts are introduced and this desire to be a hero starts to be contested and causes changes. But there should have been change in this very first scene. If your story is not constantly changing, you have a problem. The scene could be removed entirely and only minor dialogue rewrites would have had to happen for the film to still make sense without it. Because there are no significant changes, there is really no reason for this scene to exist. I hope this video helps you with writing scenes. In each of these bad scene examples, you can break them down further in the 5 rewriting steps. There are fundamental problems found in each. Start being more conscious when you watch scenes and movies play out in front of you. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like and subscribe. If you thought it could have been better though, leave it a thumbs down so I know to do better next time. Thanks guys, I'll see you later.